Hi, my name's Hannah. I'm an online English tutor and doctor from England. Today I'd like to talk about my strategies for how to write a referral letter in the Occupational English Test. I'll first talk about how to approach the writing task. I will then give you some idea of the structure that I use. And finally, I will show you an example set of case notes and an example letter and how I've used these strategies. So here is how to write a referral letter for the OET. Use your 5 minutes for the case notes wisely. You'll have 45 minutes in total to write your letter. However, the first 5 minutes you're not allowed to start writing, and this is where you need to be wise with reading the case notes. Don't start from the beginning. First, read at the bottom who you are writing to and what you want them to do. Then, as you go through the case notes, you can put yourself in the shoes of the person who will be receiving your letter. That means you can think about what information you will find relevant if you were the recipient. Think about your structure, and I will go on to talk about what structure I advise. I advise to try and leave 5 minutes at the end to correct your simple errors. This means in your revision, you should be able to write a referral letter in the correct word count within 35 minutes. Then you'll have 5 minutes to correct the simple errors that we all make when we're writing under pressure, such as an exam. In my experience, the most common errors I see from students are spelling mistakes, mistakes with articles, which could be not knowing if a noun is countable or uncountable, or incorrectly selecting whether to use an indefinite or a definite article, prepositions, and tenses. What's important is to know yourself, know from your revision which errors you make commonly, and therefore to check specifically for those in the last 5 minutes. If you're really unsure of something, the last 5 minutes of your exam is not time to spend a lot of time thinking about it. Just move on and make sure you've reread your whole letter and have changed anything that you notice on rereading was an error. Now to go on to the structure. It's important to note with the structure that the OET are very clear that they do not want one set structure to be repeated in all of their exams. The idea is that you select a structure which is helpful for that particular case notes. However, when I was a medical student and learning how to write referral letters, I found it very helpful to have a guide and some idea of structure which I could then change and adapt depending on the situation. So this is what I plan to give you here. My rough guide for a structure of an OET referral letter. First off, we need to explain the situation or the purpose of the letter. This means we need to introduce our patient, and we need to be very clear on what we want or need the reader to do. This is especially true of the post-August 2019 mark scheme, which gives us 3 marks specifically for purpose. Next we have the timeline. This is where we will show everything that has happened to the patient relevant to the reason of referral. We can either start from today, the appointment from which we will make the referral, and then go backwards to what has happened before, or we can start from the beginning, their first appointment, and move on to what has happened up until today. In my view, if it's an emergency referral, it makes sense to start from today, as the vital signs and other key information about the current state of the patient will be more relevant as to what's happened in the past. However, if it is a non-emergency, it will often make more sense to start from the beginning and work forwards. The timeline will include all of the relevant findings, including relevant investigations, and potentially the relevant actions that you have taken. For example, medications that you have prescribed. It is likely that the timeline will take up the majority of your letter, or at least a couple of paragraphs. We then move on to the background. This will include any relevant past medical history, social history, medications, etc. that are not directly involved in the timeline. Finally, we move on to recommendations. This paragraph will include exactly what you want the reader to do after having read your letter. It is important to be very specific with exactly what you want. It may be the case that you also might put in to recommendations some of the actions that you had taken. For example, if you have referred to another specialist in addition to the specialist you are writing to. Again, it's important to reiterate that this is just a rough framework to base your study on, and in certain situations, it might be more appropriate to change this. For example, in some cases, the background history of a patient might be particularly relevant, and it might be more appropriate to talk about some of the background before then going on to the timeline. This is okay, and the important thing is to use your professional judgment to make the referral letter as clear as possible for the person reading. Let's move on to an example. This is a sample set of case notes and a sample referral letter. If you would like to download this, just click on the link below the video where you can download a PDF of this file from my website. Okay, so if we have these case notes in the exam, the first thing we're going to do is go to the end and look at the writing task. We can see we're writing a referral letter to an endocrinologist, and the reason is we would like additional investigations and management for this patient. We can then look into the most recent entry, skim read, and see we're looking at a possible diagnosis of hyperthyroidism, for which we need a specialist referral. So that is the reason we're writing. We can now go back to the beginning and think about what of the information in the case notes will be relevant to an endocrinologist for a patient with potential hyperthyroidism. So we can see the name of our patient and that she presented initially with poor sleep. So we go through and we look at her social background, her family history, her medical history, and we skim for things that will be relevant to an endocrinologist. So a road traffic accident in the family is not very relevant. However, a maternal grandmother with diabetes is potentially quite relevant. Again, in the medical history, an appendectomy is not relevant. However, in my medical opinion, an allergy should always be mentioned. And we can see that she's not on any medication other than some over-the-counter vitamin D. And we can see from this that this is essentially our background paragraph. We just need to take the relevant parts of that to form that paragraph. Then we come on to some presentation dates. This is going to form the basis of our timeline. I won't go through the timeline in depth in this video, as I think it's more productive and efficient with your time to just download it and read through at your own pace and potentially draft a letter to then come back and see how I've done things in the sample letter. Okay, looking at the sample letter, I have laid it out in the same style as on the OET website. I then in my first paragraph have said, I am writing to refer this 29-year-old patient with symptoms and preliminary investigations suggestive of hyperthyroidism for specialist assessment. I have introduced the patient and I've made it very clear the purpose of my letter. I then move on to the timeline. Ms. Hassan initially presented on 27th of February 2019 with poor sleep, dry eyes and occasional benign headaches. Recent weight loss was noted at this appointment, 2 kilograms in 2 months, although this coincided with a recent increase in exercise. Her BMI, physical examination and vital signs were all normal. She was advised on sleep hygiene measures and simple eye drops. I continue with the timeline below. Ms. Hassan reattended on 13th of March with worsening symptoms and new onset palpitations. Her heart rate was 92 and her ECG was normal. Blood investigations confirmed a TSH of 0.3. Other investigations normal. The results of a 24-hour ECG are pending. This concludes our timeline. I've included relevant symptoms, relevant aspects of the physical examination, and relevant investigations. I've also stated that we're still awaiting another investigation. I then move on to the background. I discuss the potential diagnosis of hyperthyroidism with Ms. Hassan today. Of note, she advised she would like to start a family in the future. Ms. Hassan is generally well, takes only over-the-counter vitamin D, and is allergic to latex. Her only family history is that of diabetes in her maternal grandmother. Some of these aspects could be described as part of the timeline and not of background. However, I feel that her wanting to start a family is related as relevant social history, and I feel that the fact I have discussed a potential diagnosis of hypothyroidism with the patient is relevant for the recipient to know and doesn't particularly fit in either timeline or background. So for the sake of paragraph length, I have put it in here. This is an example, as I was saying, that the framework I'm proposing is flexible and should be changed based on the specific letter. Finally, my recommendations. It would be appreciated if you could review Ms. Hassan, arrange further investigations as necessary, and give advice regarding both further management and implications for fertility. Should you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Yours sincerely, Dr. Here I have stated exactly what I wish the recipient to do with the information in my letter. I will just leave you with my disclaimer that I have produced these materials myself. I am not an OET examiner, and I can't guarantee that they will be similar to what you'll have in the exam. I have, however, tried to make them as similar as possible to the examples placed on the official OET website. And it goes without saying that, of course, both the patient and the doctor in this scenario are entirely fictional, and this is designed for educational use only. Thank you ever so much for watching my video. Don't forget to check out the link below to have a look at the sample case notes. And if you would like more information about the OET, don't forget to hit subscribe. Give this video a like if you've enjoyed it, and if you'd like to see any other videos, let me know in the comments. Best of luck with your exam. Bye!